we're a few minutes in. We're still waiting for some more guests, but for the sake of your time, respecting your time, I'm going to go ahead and kick things off and start by, of course, thanking you. So I really appreciate this. This is the first interview
Right.
I've had in a long time. I used to have a radio show called Invention Talk Radio, and it was live here in Phoenix. And this is back in, let's see, my daughter was born in '95,
Mhm.
so that's when I actually stopped.
Wow.
And people, this is, well, we had the brick phones, but most people didn't have those, right? So it
Right.
was a live call-in show, and it was during rush hour, and I would have people stop, pull off the side of the road, and call from a payphone and say, "Oh my God, I just found your show, and I have ideas all the time, and
Right.
I had to call you right away." And that's telling me that there is an audience. And that was what, 15, 20, well, actually, oh my God, she's 23 years
Yeah.
ago,
A lot longer. Yeah.
long time ago. So I love that we can do this on the internet now and get the kind of reach. And I'm looking forward to sharing with our audience all the tips and tricks. I'm calling it my $1 million Rolodex. So I'm
Oh,
calling on
there you
folks that I've had relationships with in the past and that I've had the opportunity to do business with over the years, and asking for the opportunity to just share your pearls of wisdom with our audience.
go.
And as that grows, you're welcome to share this as well. So thank you again for
Yeah.
doing
You're
this.
welcome.
Um, I like to start with, if you wouldn't mind, just a quick, how did you end up in the business of inventing?
Right. Well, it's a long story as usual. You always hear the long stories.
I'll go
So
all night. It's up to you and your
yeah,
schedule.
yeah. I originally went to college for photography. I got out of photography, couldn't afford it, and so I went into commercial art. And then, fortunate enough to find a job that was a job that really encompassed a lot of different things. It had marketing, it had promotion, it had sales, but it also had manufacturing. And so what happened is at that point, what I realized is that the relationship between manufacturing and building things and creating things and then selling them was a great process. And so if I could understand both, that was when I got hooked. So I started running a manufacturing facility, and kind of got into the management of that, and then kind of morphed into selling that product so I could design it, manufacture it, and then sell it. And so when that process happened, that's when the light bulb went off. And it said, if I could find other ways to do that with other companies, that was a successful thing for me because that made it where I had the ability to kind of control the process. And so it was a little misnomer for me because as an inventor, as you get farther into the process, you learn that you don't have a lot of control, unless you work in your own company. Like if you have your own company and you come up with the idea and you're a one-man band, so to speak, then you can control that. But you learn that you can't, and then that's when the morphing happens. That's when other things start taking over, where you realize that you need other people. You have to listen. You have to do all these other things. So I got it. I don't want to say by accident, but it was more of learning the process from a number of different ways, and then that got me in. And once I was in, I was hooked.
Well, and speaking of in, for our guests who are just joining us, we're speaking with Scott Plasek, who is responsible for innovation and product development in the Pet CPG, consumer product goods, for those of you who are unfamiliar with that term, product channels. And he has successfully developed patented products for Wal-Mart, Target, Petco, and independent pet channels, resulting in seven-figure sales increases and in those specified target categories, of course. He's experienced in innovation and product development pro with a demonstrated history of working in the consumer goods industry. And you can learn more about his company at heropetbrands.com if you're curious about looking that up. Scott, what was the original product that you were talking about that you thought of?
What was that?
What was your original invention, the one that you said you thought of and you started making and selling?
Well, what we talked about, we were in the. Actually, I've been in so many different industries. This was way back when I was in the automotive industry, and we were making truck tops, and so camper shells for the back of trucks, and so we thermoformed them. So it was a diversification project from Igloo Cooler, And so they had a material that they wanted to make, and they couldn't figure out how to do it. So what we did is we actually got the material put together, learned how to thermoform it, and they ended up patenting it. I didn't get my name on it, but we patented a co-extruded polymer that we made truck tops with. And so that was kind of my first foray into chemistry and manufacturing and machinery and everything else. And so that was kind of the first one. And then from there, I've been in every industry. I've been in fishing. I've been in hard goods. I've been in soft goods. I've been in cigars. I've been in Vietnamese pottery. I've been everything you can name. And that's part of, my process too. Everything, I bring all of those categories into my inventions, into my ideation. So for me, it works out great because I'm not tied to one specific category. I bring them all in, and that gives me a different look on how products can get made, and how I can bring ideas from other categories in.
For our guests who are just checking in, you can also leave your questions in the chat, and we will be happy to answer them for you as we go throughout the program. If you're tuning into this having been pre-recorded at a later date, you can still ask your questions, and they actually will come still to me, and I will be able to answer them live. So it does not matter whether you're participating tonight or watching at a future date. So, Hero Pets. Is the system, did you notice when you went from company to company, did the innovation system, that process change, or is it pretty much the same everywhere you go?
I would say pretty much it always changes. And the reason it changes is not because the innovation and the ideation changes, it's the way the company functions. Okay. And so some companies are sales driven. Matter of fact, I had this conversation today. Some companies are sales driven, some are marketing driven, some are innovation driven. Some are manufacturing driven. It doesn't change the process so much, but it changes who's responsible for the process.
Sure.
So a good example of that is like marketing. When it's marketing driven, you tend to ideate more toward claims and things that are needed to move products off the shelf, because that's what marketing does. When it's sales driven, it's all about the numbers, and it's all about salespeople getting new appointments. It's, you're ideating a little differently. The process of the ideation doesn't really change. It's what's the result of it. And so I start, like right now we're marketing driven. We're trying to become sales driven. That's why I had this conversation today. And so you're changing the process a little bit because of who the, I want to say, internal customer is. The internal customer will become sales because you got to convince them of your idea that's going to revolutionize pet care. Marketing people tend to look at it more claims driven. Salespeople are like, gimme, so I can go get an appointment. If it's great, great. If it's okay. I'll still take it because I need a new appointment. So the process doesn't change. The ideation of determining the consumer problem, determining what the solution is, the cost, can it be manufactured? The A to Z of it never changes, I don't think. It's just a matter of who internally you're selling it to in a large company.
Okay.
If you're on your own, you don't have that problem, right? You get to do it yourself. You live or die by yourself.
Which is, you're right, a blessing and a curse, right? Because when doing it alone, there's no collaboration, which means no diversity, which means it's a bigger challenge getting true creativity in solving that problem.
Yeah, great.
So when you talk about the process being pretty much the same, the ideation part, the invention part, whether the problem comes from a salesperson who says this is what our customers are telling us we need, or you're going about your day and you see it. Someone comes to the team and says, let's do this. What are those steps, if you're allowed to talk to me about what your company does or what you personally do, that you find to be the best practices that you would take no matter where you go or what company you're working for?
Yeah, and first off, I'll always say, and this is what we do, even when we talk to inventors about potential licensees and stuff like that. The number one thing always is it has to solve a problem. There's no question. If it doesn't solve a problem, in fact, when we talk to potential people who send products in, that's the first question that we always ask. The first 2 seconds of every conversation is, tell me what the problem is you want to solve, not what the solution is. What's the problem you're trying to solve? And if somebody can articulate that, if I'm able with an idea to articulate what that problem is, then the solution becomes not the easy part, but it becomes more palatable because I have a solution. Now, it may not be the best solution, but it's a solution to a problem. So I always tell people, if you're saying, hey, the problem is this, this, and this, and people are shaking their head going, oh, yes, I know exactly what you're talking about, then we're already good. Mm-hmm. Because they already recognize that there is a problem, and now they're open to the solution. So the process for me is, I have a salesperson that comes in and they say, I have a buyer who asked for this. That's great. I love that. But it immediately throws up red flags. Why is a buyer asking? Because number one, that product may be a dog on the shelf and they need something different. Did it not solve the problem? Is it too high priced? There's so many opportunities. If I have a marketing person saying, give me some innovation in that area, well, that's the question. What problem do you want me to solve?
Right.
And we start from there. There's no question. We always start from there. The next part we always look in is what's there on the shelf. And that's unfortunately not as easy today in the pet industry, especially because it's moving so fast. But you have a lot of independents. You have a lot of chains. You have Wal-Mart looming over everything. So you have to do the due diligence to find what's out there. And the pet industry is one, unfortunately, where you have this huge division of products. So you have people who can build products in their garage and make enough money to pay their bills. And then you have these huge companies like Purina and everything in between. Sure. And so in the pet industry is really different because you have to go seek out those things.
You can't ask the dog what the problem is?
Yeah.
I can't imagine going to the dog or the cat and saying, just tell me what's wrong.
Well, I know, and that's
the next invention.
Don't even start.
You have to depend on people to tell you what the problem is with pets.
Yeah, and it's, pets can't speak. Obviously, you're alluding to that. And so some products, and especially in the pet industry, like what they don't like for their pet. And so they're buying it for somebody else. Like in the gift industry, you're buying a gift for somebody else. That's essentially what's happening.
Exactly. I want to come back to the problem because that's actually a really important point I'd like to drive home before we finish today. But there are a couple comments and questions here. So Susan says, it is really amazing how you were able to benefit and utilize all your experience. That is a true blessing. I appreciate your company as a big dog lover and rescuer. And she is a big time rescuer.
Yep.
Steve Thrasher says, how does inventing and licensing in the pet industry differ from inventing and licensing in other industries? Followed by, is solving pet boredom a problem? So we've got a two-part question there.
Yeah, the pet boredom, as in boredom, B-O-R-D-O-M.
Yes.
Boredom is one of those things. Actually, the pet boredom is more related to pet anxiety. Pet anxiety, just for your information, about 60% of all dogs in the shelters are there because of pet anxiety. They're not there because they were bad pets. They were there because their owners left them or didn't treat them well enough. So boredom becomes one of those issues that's actually being addressed in the pet industry right now, where there's a lot of, I'm going to call them loosely robotic toys that you can control via apps. So for instance, if your dog is at home, you have a dog toy that you can control via your app with relationship to the cameras that are in your room. So you can see the camera, you can do the toy, so there's a lot of that interactive. In fact, this year at the pet show, there was more interactive than ever before. So that was
CBD products. for that as well? Did you happen to see a lot of CBD products for that?
Oh
Because
my
here in
gosh,
Arizona,
please don't ask me about that.
yeah, it's amazing. It's like everywhere.
CBD is, yeah, CBD is one of those opportunities that, um, in the pet industry, there's been some trends, like grains and foods, and you see these trends kind of come and go. And yes, most human things come into the pet industry. CBD, there were probably 30 booths there with CBD, everything from drops to treats to everything.
Sure.
Unfortunately, there's not a lot of science behind it yet. So a lot of large companies are not buying in yet. Petco, PetSmart, for instance, Wal-Mart, not buying in yet, waiting to see what happens.
Sure.
The other part of the question, which is ideation in the pet industry versus other industries, I would say the pet industry is, I always tell people, it's one of the worst industries to be in. And the reason is because you have an ultimate user of a product that can't articulate what they want. So the person who's buying it for them is buying it on their preferences and on their 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 conceptions and everything else. So you as a dog owner, you're buying your dog what you think they want. Mm-hmm. Now, the difficulty with that is that may not be the best thing for the dog, but you project that onto them. So you have that, and then the other thing is most people don't understand that the pet industry in general is not regulated. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, dog food is not regulated, and now there's been some government type legislation that may get into that, but most pet things are not regulated. So when you have issues like treats and stuff that come in from China and they have some issues with some dogs, that's what happens, and that's why. So one of the main differences is that it's not regulated. So you have this, it's hard because you have to decide what kind of company you are. So you have companies in the pet industry that will put out products that they know don't work, but it's not regulated. Whereas other industries, you don't have that issue. Because if I put out a ladder in the hardware industry and the ladder fails the testing, it failed the testing and the government takes care of that. In the pet industry, if I put out a pet treat and that pet treat has salmonella on it, then I get bad press, but I didn't get regulated by the government. So it's a little different because those companies are allowed to participate in this industry. And so it makes it where sometimes one or two companies will ruin, potentially, that category. And so you have to be careful. So it's unlike other industries in that there's no government regulation.
So with regards to licensing, is licensing in the pet industry easier, would you say, because of the lack of regulation? Does that open?
Yes. Well, yeah, it opens it up because it's easier to get products in. The difficulty is you have to choose if your company wants to be, which way you want to be. Because if you want to hold a line and you want to have, like a great example is flea and tick. If you want your flea and tick to be efficacious and work, then you set a number that you want your number to be. You want it to be 95%. Well, there's a lot of other people selling 25%. And they're making the same claims that you are. And so you have to be vigilant when you're going to a buyer. You have to be vigilant where you're selling your company standard to that buyer and saying, these other people are not to this standard.
Right.
We are. And that's the difference. And so it makes it somewhat easier, but you just have to choose which kind of company you want to be.
Who you want to be when you grow up. Steve, let me know for your chest. So on the problem, getting people out their head in their head. Do you have your? I can hear my computer, which is where I think that people are getting feedback. Maybe just turn the volume down a little bit.
Yeah, let me see if I can get it because I haven't changed anything. So let me see if I can get it here.
Okay, while you're doing that, my question for you is with regard to the problem. It's one thing to identify a problem, but as we know, it has to be a big enough problem to cause people to make a switch from whatever they're currently using as a solution, right? So that's better, by the way. Thank you. Um, how do you define or quantify a problem being big enough to invest in innovating and manufacturing and selling that product?
Yeah, I think the way we define it is fairly simple. We define it in terms of the customer that is available to purchase it. So, for instance, 50% roughly of all pet dollars are sold in Walmart. Food, litter, and everything. So, if that product is designed to go into Walmart or mass, obviously it's much more enticing instead of like independent pet channel where you're selling 1, 2 cases at a time. So I tend to skew more toward innovating for the larger customers. I don't shy away from the other, but I tend to spend more time working on areas where I know the scale is there. Um, are there opportunities in the smaller? Yes, it's actually easier to sell. It's quicker to sell because independent pet channel people will buy all the time, whereas I have line reviews for everyone else. So we have, like for instance, we have one time a year for Walmart. So we have one time a year for Petco. We have one time a year for PetSmart. And those line reviews happen at a specific time, and then basically 4 to 6 months later, the product goes in and stays for a year. So the cycle there for that is very long. So we tend to spend a lot of time ideating and creating products that are specifically designed for line review specific times. Then the rest of the products all get put on the schedule along the way to say, okay, I want to work on this product for a launch sometime in 2020. Those products get worked and those wheels get turned, but not as quickly as the line review was. Because, like for instance, we are hearing from Walmart now our new products will go in March. They'll be through March of 2020, and then they'll start in 2020, and then they'll go all the way through 2021. So with that, that means that that opportunity is done until I get to next June. But I've got to get started early.
So is there any kind of a process that you go through for quantifying the opportunity, especially when it's coming from an outside, an inventor who's submitted it to you for licensing, and you agree there's a problem, but how do you measure whether it's a big enough problem, and at what point is it technically big enough?
Yeah, I think what we do is we sit down. We have what we call an idea screen, and the idea screen we sit down. We determine the product. Like if you brought a product to me, a licensee product, we would take that product and we would put it through our idea screen. The idea screen takes into account royalties. It takes into account manufacturing cost, manufacturing ability. It has a lot of, I would say, quantifiable numbers, but I will always tell people there is a lot of non-quantifiable opportunities in each product. So can it be manufactured? Where's it manufactured from? Like a great example right now is, obviously, if I manufacture something in China right now, I've got a 25% tariff waiting on me, sitting at the door of the container when it comes in, fixing to be 30 potentially. So is it available in any other countries? So there's a great opportunity for numbers and quantification where we say that product exists or it doesn't exist. There's an opportunity. How much could we sell? How many customers can we have? How much do we have to stock? How much safety stock? There's a ton of issues that are quantifiable. I want to say just as important is the issues of where is it manufactured? Can it be manufactured? Because we look at a lot of products that I love and that would be great in our industry that can't be manufactured. There's just no machine yet available to manufacture it. And then
Are those products that are coming to you from independent inventors who didn't understand how to invent something that could be manufactured? Okay.
yeah, I mean, like,
So
yeah, it's tough because you may have an idea for a problem. Okay, I'm walking my dog, and this is not a great analogy, but I'm walking my dog at night. I can't see. Okay, I invent a flashlight. Okay, that's great. The flashlight's great, but this flashlight has special things. It does, it has sound. It has a Bluetooth speaker. It has all kinds of things. The question then becomes is there a factory available that has flashlights and Bluetooth speakers at the same time? Because if not, then that factory who has Bluetooth speakers has to learn how to make flashlights, or vice versa, because it's a great product. Don't get me wrong, it's a great product, but that factory now became specialized and they had to learn something new. Now, recognizing learning something new for a factory that they don't really know about means they need time, machinery, effort, and all kinds of things. Or you're going to build it in two pieces and then bring it together somewhere. Well, now I've got labor to do that at one factory or the other, and they maybe make the Bluetooth speaker, but they don't know anything about flashlights, and so the flashlights don't work. That becomes an issue. So it's
So it must not to mention you have to start thinking factory, so learning the margin for error build into it at that point also.
yes,
Because
yeah,
you don't know until you start building it.
right. And with any factory, like I've got innovation. I'm leaving for China on Saturday. We have an innovative product coming out in Wal-Mart, and so I'm going to see the first article. It's the first machine run, the whole deal. I've already seen their first blush at making the product. Then again, that's why I'm going to China, because it's not correct. And so, they have factories are people who make things. They did not invent it. And so when you have that kind of scenario, they have the tendency to maybe cut a little corners, try and save you a little money, those kind of things. And so you have this factory, and that's what they're trying to do. They have great intentions, but I don't need that. What I need is the product that we actually designed, and I want it the way I designed it. And so that's why I'm going to China, is to say, no, we need it this way. And I need it because we've already shown it to a customer. That customer wants it that way. The claims that are on the packaging say it's that way. It needs to be that way.
Right, exactly. Okay, so we're running out of time. I want to address, and this goes along with what we were talking earlier. If somebody has a pet product, they're ready to license. When do you think is the right time? How far do they need to be? Do they have to have a conversation? Other than the problem to have with you?
I think if they know the problem, we're really good at making prototypes. Sometimes I get products that are already prototyped. They have a drawing, they have a 3D printed prototype, because that's easy to get now. The difficulty at that point is we always like to be in as far up the stream as possible from the ideation stage. And the reason is because they may have a solution to a problem, but there may be 2 or 3 pieces that need to go with it. And so what happens with people is they'll call or they'll send me a product and they'll say, I filed a provisional patent, or I'm in the process of filing a utility patent. Those kind of things. And what happens is when they get to that point, it becomes very difficult. I lost you. I couldn't hear you. There you go.
Sorry, is that better? Is there a process or something that people can do to submit their product for you? Is there a standardized process, or should they?
No, not really. I mean, the way we normally do it is we get ideas in, I get them in my email. We typically, depending upon the conversation initially, will sign a quick non-disclosure agreement. And that non-disclosure is a one page for us that says, basically, I won't share, you won't share. And then what it does is it allows some flexibility in the process, because that process needs to be a little flexible. Because you may have your idea and you may love it, but if we add 5 things to it, that becomes a shared idea. And some inventors don't like that. Some inventors don't want that process. They want to license their product. I'm okay with that too. And then we do license agreements, we do royalty agreements, we do all kinds of agreements. We have a number of different agreements each way where people get what I always lovingly call mailbox money. And so that's fine. I just want to be in as close to the ideation stage as possible to kind of fit it in. And then the other thing I would say is we get a lot of people that don't understand the process of timing. If, like, for instance, I got a product today, and that product today came in an idea, and I was going to show it to Walmart. I don't show it to Walmart until June, July of 2020. I don't actually invoice a product until March of 21.
Wow.
So a lot of people don't understand the process of how long it takes, and they get very frustrated because they want to move it along. They want to see it on the shelf. I want to do it. Let's get going. But to get the volume, to get the numbers that you really want, it takes a lot longer than people realize. Most people will look at you like a deer in the headlight when you say, okay, it's June, I need an agreement, we're going to have a royalty agreement, you're not going to see a check for a year and a half. And that's when they usually go somewhere else, and they take it to somebody else, and they get told that again, and then they come back. And they say, okay, I'm ready. Well, by then we've moved on, but because we've got to set products for a line review.
Sure.
And so that's part of the process that inventors who are not in the business don't understand.
Did I hear for people to come to earlier and later because you want to be a part of making sure the process is well thought out?
Yeah. I think that's the easiest way, and the reason is there are, and this is typical. I don't want to say typical inventor, but the scope of inventors who look for products like theirs is typically very small area. They'll say, I haven't seen anything like this at my Petco or my PetSmart or my Walmart. When in reality, it's unfortunately a worldwide process now. I mean, with the advent of world patents, and then the patent office using art from international that we have agreements with as prior art, it makes it even more difficult. Experience with that, we had a patent not too long ago. We had a competitor that challenged one of our patents with art from Switzerland. That was filed before us.
Yeah, they were trying to invalidate the patent so that they could get on the market, they could get products. Sure.
Yeah, and so we lost half of our claims, and then they made a product very similar to ours.
Yeah.
That's the new game. And so that game becomes where if you're in farther up the stream, you can ferret out a lot of that before you get to this, I got this product and this is the way I want to have it. It's not that easy anymore because there's so many complications. And I always tell people, people always say in the innovation and all that, there's really not a whole lot of new ideas left. There's some nuances, but the days of just coming up with something that nobody's ever thought of, it's really difficult now.
Right.
You're really morphing things from other products and other areas, and you're bringing them in and putting them into new forms is really, I don't want to say it's not necessarily innovation, but it's a loose part of that. You know, having a new leash for a dog, you're going to be hard pressed to come up with a leash that hasn't been thought of in the last 150 years.
So on that note, I actually left a comment saying that her dog is constantly through her leash. So if you could go to the dog penny, that would be great.
Yeah.
Steve, I'm not sure I understand what you're asking about the 18-month rule. I'm not IPRs and repeat the AIA. I'm not sure what you mean. If you could elaborate a little bit more, we can address that. So do you require a patent or patent pending to submit, or can somebody come to you with just an idea?
We get a lot of ideas, and that's why we sign non-disclosures, and that cleans that up. Because
and you pay for that? You pay for that?
Well, yeah, we can handle that. The difficulty now is the provisional patents.
Really?
The provisional patent is now what we used to call the poor man's patent, where you would mail it to yourself in the old days, where you file, you had the idea and you put it in an envelope and then stamp it and mail it to yourself. The provisional patent is just the patent's office way of commercializing that and making money off of it. And so now I get a lot of people who will come in and say, oh, I filed a provisional. Well, that's great. I don't know what that looks like. No, in fact, no one knows what that looks like, because you put it in an envelope and you gave it to the patent office and paid them money, and they're just holding it for 364 days. It really doesn't help the process, other than, for me, designing products, I can show products now to a buyer with a provisional patent and have some security for someone who is showing it. Now, if you're a inventor and you're showing it to a company by provisionally patenting, you're really not gaining a lot, because you're protecting the original idea in its form in the envelope. If there's anything else added to that, then it depends on how much, and it becomes invalid. So it's really for people who own companies, who are putting out products, and innovators. Provisional patents work great. For a typical, I have an idea, I'm putting it on a piece of paper, I'm going to mail it to you, I'd rather be in that process up front and help them get a patent if it's worth it.
Interesting.
On that, sometimes we do provisionally patent products to just have patent pending on the package.
Right.
That's the new game.
That's a strategy. Sure.
Pending. Yeah, everything's patent pending now.
Right.
And,
but also the inventions where we used to be invent now in our country. So the first person who files the patent gets awarded. You can't go back and argue, well, I thought of that first anymore. That's where the value, I think, of the provisional application, one of the strategies, is if you want to get that date established. But to your point, if it changes a lot, by the time you get to the company and you've already over invented or invented beyond that, you can't use that. There's legal stuff around that as well. But so if I hear you right, then you're just saying it's more advantageous for you for an inventor to already be in that beyond the provisional application, a utility application patent pending process, because you know it's working towards the actual approval. Is that right? Being awarded.
Yeah, I mean that's the process, right? The process is, if you're going to go down that road, and there's another whole conversation and a whole nother webinar about patents and the way products are patented now, and the provisional, and is a utility patent worth it now? There's a whole nother webinar in that.
I have a whole course.
Yes, I mean it's crazy, and it has so many nuances to it, depending upon the category and the product and all those things. But from a typical general standpoint, it's always easier to be farther upstream in the ideation stage with a new idea, because you can kind of guide it along with the knowledge that you have in the industry. Whereas a person who just invents something typically is not. They may have had a problem that their dog had, and they're having a solution. That doesn't mean that it's not for sale somewhere. It doesn't mean that somebody hadn't come up with it before. And, that's the other part of that. It may have been out there 20 years ago, and you don't have visibility of that.
But for the purpose of your company, then, they can come to you literally with just the idea. They don't have to even have a patent pending on it, whether it's provisional utility. Design, I suspect a design is even okay as long as it's protecting the value there. How can people reach you if they would like to submit an idea to you, and what would you like them to know about that submission process?
Well, they can always send me an email, and you can put that on your system. That's the scott.plasek@heropetbrands.com.
Okay.
They can send me an email, and what basically it's the easiest is to say I have a new pet idea, and then give me a phone number, and I make the phone call. And the reason is I want to have a conversation about that product, about that problem, and about that solution. And I want to have that conversation for two reasons, two very good reasons. One is to get to know the person, because I'm an inventor. You're an inventor. We're with lots of people inventors. There are different types of inventors. There are people who have products that are their babies. They want to go, they want that, they'll mortgage their house. They'll do everything possible to get that product. Then you have the other inventor, which is the one who invents products, has ideas all the time. They want to get it out in the marketplace. They want to take that money and go do more. They want to keep inventing. They want to do those things. I want to know who that person is who's sending it, because obviously some are more difficult to deal with. Me included. I have ideas, and sometimes I go, I have to have it this way. And there's some that are, that's okay. If this morphs into something else, it's okay. That dictates how the product is seen and how the product is measured in your metrics that we had before, because it's a business in the end. And that business is, if I have a person who sees it as their baby and mortgages their house, they have more in it. They have more desire. They have more passion. But that comes with a downside too. It comes with the pressure of having that. And the pressure is difficult, because then time becomes a factor. I got to have this done now. You got to get me something, because I've already spent $20,000 doing a patent. I've already done prototypes. I've already done all that. I have to get to know a person too. And then the product, obviously, solution, problem, good product, can it be manufactured, all those things. And how much do they know about it? How much they knew about the process? And those two factors always come through, not in an email, not in a text, not in a description on a little sheet of paper that says, this is what I came up with. It's a conversation. And the analogy I have is, when I go to a trade show and somebody's standing in a booth, we have a conversation about their product. I have the opportunity to ask questions both ways. And that process helps sell a product. It helps get me interested in a product. It's the same thing with inventors. I want to be interested. and I'm going to call. And that's what a lot of inventors are. They're always real interested, because they're like, oh, he's never going to call. I always call. I never know. I never know what I'm going to find. I never know if it may be an invention I may use 2 years from now. I don't know that.
I agree with Steve. He excellent insight. Excellent insight. So identifying the problem, helping. We're still selling people, not companies. So I need to get a person excited, and it starts by getting agreement. To sum up our talk today, getting agreement on what that problem is, and then identifying the solution that doesn't just address the end user, but all the people who have to touch it on the path to commercialization. So the manufacturing, you mentioned early in our talk today that often products will come to you, but they're just not manufacturable because inventors don't understand the manufacturing process, or costs are thrown off. the perceived value of what it would retail for versus the cost of goods for our audience who doesn't understand that part. So getting involved, it's really been delightful speaking with you and learning more about how you want to do this early rather than later. That's the first I've heard of that. And I agree with it completely and wholeheartedly. So as I wrap up, if anybody else has any other questions, please pop them in there. We'll do our best to get it answered. My last question for you today, Scott, is there a good example of, and you can pick which one of two, the worst experience you had dealing with an inventor or the best experience you had dealing with an inventor? They're important stories.
I know. Since you we want to pump up inventors, we want to lift them up. So the best ones are always the ones who it's always fun to have an inventor who brings their product in, they see the process, they get their first check, their first royalty check, they go to the store, they take pictures, they see their product on the shelf. I've had a number of those where products are successful. And so those are always the greatest ones because they'll send you a text, they'll send you a picture and say, I saw it. I can't believe I finally saw it. The worst ones are always ones, and I have to tell you, they're always the ones, and they're the inventors who are what I determine and call the all-in people. And it makes it makes it where innovation and products sometimes we tend to take the human factor out of it because they're products, they're selling it to people, you're making money and all those things. But some people, they take it so personally that they'll spend their life savings doing it. And those are the ones that really I struggle with because they'll tell you, I have a second mortgage on my house to get this done. And it pains me because they may have a great idea, they may not. But in the end, it's about humans. It's about people who they're all in. And that all in is difficult because when you're betting everything you have on a product, that pressure is substantial. It's so overwhelming. And I've had a number of those in my career where we had people and you try and sell them a little harder. You try and convince them a little more, that buyer, but it always tends to work the opposite, where they either get it that you're trying to press them or whatever, and then that person who's an everyday person, they have so much on the line and they lose, and that always hurts me because I've done that a couple of times. That's personal experience, right?
There you go. Thank you. Me too.
Yeah, it's personal experience, and you bet, and you've had legal difficulties and all kinds of things that go with that.
Sure.
That inventors who have an idea on a piece of paper don't understand that it didn't work, and you had a credit line, and you own your own company, and you went your way, and every single day at 12 hours a day, you're trying to sell this one product and you're doing all that. When if you just license it to someone who had that ability to do it for you and takes all the liability of returns and credits and receivables and all those things, and you get mailbox money, it's much better.
Mm-hmm. Because I often, it's probably not a good analogy, but I often use it anyway. It's a lot like, being a very young person, not old enough to probably be bearing children, and adopting that child out to someone who can raise it well and has the means, the knowledge, the wisdom. This is your brain baby, right? So why wouldn't you want to pass that baton to somebody who has all of that, not just the experience, but the insight to avoid the most common mistakes. And I see the same mistakes over and over. And I've been doing this almost 30 years now, and it's still the same mistakes 30 years later that it was then.
No question. No question. And that's why I mean, I hate to say it's simple, but we really break it down in summary is, tell me what the problem is. Just articulate your interpretation of what the problem is, and then tell me your solution. And in that first 2 or 3 minutes, you get a real good indication of, do they actually get it? I don't mean to make it so simple, but that's how it all starts, right? If I get it to the shelf, and I get a product to the shelf and it doesn't do what it says it does, then people don't buy it. It's really simple. If it doesn't solve a problem, now, sure, there's some sexy products out there. I don't personally need a new Ferrari. I would love one, but I don't need a new one, that kind of thing. And it may be an upgrade, which is not an innovation. It just looks cooler. I get those. That's not really innovation. That's renovation. The innovation part is more where if I'm actually bringing something to market that actually is changing the way people look at things and the way they solve this problem, then it's got to do that. It really has to do that. And it has to be innovative, and it has to be easy enough, because there's so many things. It's so complicated once you get past that. The claims, the packaging, the color, the size of the package, the shelf presence, the danglers that hang on the shelf, all this stuff.
Everything. Yeah.
But if the problem is not solved, then it doesn't really matter, because you're not going to buy it again. You're just not.
Scott Plasek, thank you so much. I can't think of a better conversation than this for the first Inventors program. So this was awesome. At the heart of everything is about solving the problem, solving it well, having that dramatic difference over the competition to get to be in the marketplace and be competitive. Yep. So thank you so much for answering. It looks like we answered everything. I missed something. I apologize. Scott, if you could mind one more time repeating how people can submit an idea to you and what you'd like from them, we'll wrap it up with that.
Yeah, it's scott.plasek@heropetbrands.com. And the submission is very simple. I have an idea. This idea is this for pets. I don't need a big detailed description of what it is. And you can reach me at this time and at this phone number. And I'll talk to you soon, because I'm going to reach out to you on the phone, and we're going to have a nice long conversation about your product and your problem.
Awesome. Thank you. Susan says thank you also. Appreciate your time very much. We went a little bit over, but it was worth it for me anyway. People can hit the pause button and come back if they ran out of time.
Yep, absolutely. Anytime. I'm working
on a mop right now, but you've got me going. So.
Well, I can tell you today, let's see. So today I worked on puppy pee pads. Today I'm leaving for China on Saturday to work on dog diapers. And so you never know what you're going to be working on. You never know what those innovations are going to be. But like, for instance, the dog diapers, for instance, we have them in Wal-Mart. They sell really well. And so we're innovating them. So next March, there will be completely new packaging and new diapers in Wal-Mart that are better than everyone else's. But that process started 2 years ago.
Wow. So. Wow. Oh, I have somebody I'm going to send to you who does adult, shares an invention for adult diapers, maybe to translate.
Maybe so.
Everyone who tuned in, thank you so much for being part of our program with us today, for your questions, and for those of you who tune in following our live recorded version. Just a reminder, you can still add your questions. I will get them live, and I will do my best to respond in a timely way. I've got some exciting things coming up in the near future. I hope that you'll keep your eyes and ears open for the homesteading and some other exciting things that are going to be coming your way really soon. So for now, thank you. I love you all so much. Thank you for being here. Good night, Scott. Thank you.
Thanks.